Most modern wars are fought over political disagreements, which are pretty shallow. Ideological battles. What kind of government are we going to have? Capitalism called communism, or communism called capitalism? Or what have you? Those wars are fought out of fear. So we say, all right, we're going to blow those bastards to pieces. We're afraid of them. We don't want anything to do with them. We'd like to just get rid of them. Yeah, but if that is your motivation, and this is your spirit, that you're frightened of the enemy, you're not going to be a good soldier. A good soldier is supposed to be courageous. See? You're not supposed to be afraid. So, all right, say, well, okay, we're not frightened of these people. We just think that they've been exploiting everybody else, and we are the knight on a white horse with a lance, and we're going to rescue everybody. Okay? In you go. And you stir up the same kind of problems. Everybody says to the knight on the white horse, gee, aren't you a stuffed shirt? You think you're holier than everybody else. You offend us by your righteousness. You're disgusting. You're not even human. And after all, you're a hypocrite. Because you may come on politically with this white horse, but you have all kinds of rackets back home, and you know. Still, you're courageous. You've won all that courage. You're not afraid of death and all that. So, if you're not afraid of death and all that, the question comes up again. Why fight? What's the point? Who are you protecting? Are you going to teach your children to be afraid? Say, I'll protect my children because they've been... I'm the father. I've learned not to be afraid. Why didn't I teach my children not to be afraid? If I had, I wouldn't have had to defend them. Because they would have said it's just an illusion and... we can dissolve out of this body and appear somewhere else. Because if that is what happens, and it's pretty obvious that it is, I mean, when I say you'll appear somewhere else, everybody who appears is you. Only you can only experience it one at a time. But everybody only experiences themselves in the singular. But everybody's you, everybody's I, that's our name. We all share that. So there's nothing to worry about in that sense. But if you know that in your heart of hearts, obviously the only strategy that is worth anything at all is not to chop everything up, but to love everybody.
Why fight? Hello to you all. You're watching RHTVLive, and of course, we're going to talk politics and geopolitics, and we are streaming live from the beautiful city of Maastricht, which is in the south of the Netherlands. Now, what's on our radar? Well, I believe everyone's watching at the Middle East. Right, what's happening over there? We have Israel and Iran in the crosshairs, and yeah, it's a bad situation, going from bad to worse, right? And yeah, we need to keep focus on what's happening over there in the region. And first, we're going to take a look at what's happening in Iran. It's a couple of hours ago, and then we'll look at what's happening in the United States, right? Because they're one of the big decision makers, and yeah, we're going to focus on Mr. Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson. So First, we're going to take a look in Iran, what's happening over there. We have the former President Ahmadinejad that survived an assassination attempt, right? So I believe he's okay, even though clearly in the beginning stages of this assassination, people were talking that he was dead and this and that. So, muddy the waters. But this is what really happened. So his Toyota Land Cruiser was reportedly sabotaged for a religious trip. The sabotaged SUV later spun out, colliding with other convoy cars. This is all happening in Iran, right? Pretty recent news, 9 hours ago. So that's pretty recent. And yeah, very, very sad thing to see. Does this have to, involve Israel? Who knows? Who knows, right? This is a war vacuum that Iran and Israel are in. So anything can happen, you know. The incident occurred en route to Zanjan for Muharram morning ceremony. So, yep, that's what's happening. And as far as we know, the state media is also bombed, right? We also have images of that. Let's see if we can find that. Iran State TV bomb. There we go. So here we have someone on Iranian state television, basically surviving or not a bomb attack, right? So let's take a look at this clip here. This is from 2 days ago. That you heard the voice of the invader of the homeland. There, I'll translate it. The voice of the invader is the voice of truth and justice. Wait, was it justice or injustice? Anyway, what you saw, the voice you heard, the dusty atmosphere of the stadium, sound of bugs. There we go. There we go. Yep. Bomb blast. Put on the sound again. There we go. So basically they're saying, God is great, we survived, God is great. And yeah, let's think about this, right? What if this happened in Washington, D.C.? Or name another state or country, capital, can happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere. Now, people in Congress over there in the United States are like, Iran hates us. Yeah, they really hate us. I wonder why. Why would Iran hate the United States? Well, let's take a look in history. What happened in 1953? A coup d'etat. So basically, you had a president, right? People voted for a president, and that president, was not aligned with the international times, stances, Western powers and such. And yeah, we need to get rid of this guy. So you had the United States and the United Kingdom organizing a coup to overthrow an elected president, right? Mossadegh. And the Iranians never forgot this. Yeah? They never forgot this. So this is the breeding stage of a bad sentiment coming from Iran. How would America feel if, say North Korea would overthrow the American government, right? So this is in the blood of most Iranians. They know this. Right? This is a very big part of their history. You're tampering, as an external power, you're tampering with other countries. This is not the only time that the U.S. was involved in Iran, right? We know the Iraq-Iran war. We know Iraq got weapons and Iran got weapons from the United States. We know. Iran-Contra, right? The Iran-Contra. So basically you guys were giving money to Iraq to fight Iran, and you were giving Iran money to defend itself from Iraq, right? This is in the blood of the Iranians. They remember this. This is the foreign interventions that, this is why they chant death to America. We're trying to find ground here for world peace, right? And we're far away from that. We're far away from that. So let's take a look at what's happening in the United States. We have Ted Cruz, and Tucker Carlson is going to ask him about what does he know about Iran? Right? What does he know about the country that he's willing to attack for another country in the Middle East?
Have refrained from killing heads of state. I have not publicly called for killing the Ayatollah. What I've called for is whatever is necessary to stop him from getting nuclear weapons. In the first Trump term, what that meant was maximum pressure. So in the first Trump term, I spent a lot of time urging the president to withdraw from the disastrous Iranian nuclear deal that Obama had. President Trump agreed with me. He did that. And then I urged him to end the oil waivers and to sanction the hell out of the country. And it ended up crippling their economy. So Iran at the time was selling 2 million barrels of oil a day. 1 million barrels, I'm sorry, 1 oil a day. When President Trump ended the oil waivers, it cut their sales to 300,000 barrels a day. At the end of the Trump term, the Iranian economy was in shambles. They had
But wait a minute. You had Obama, right? Obama made a deal with Iran to enrich themselves with stuff, right? So Iran says, okay, we have a deal with the United States that we can enrich ourselves with all that, And what happens is the United States got another government under Donald Trump, and basically said, we're going to sanction Iran. We're going to sanction Iran because they're not allowed to enrich themselves with uranium and all other metals and stuff, you know. You're not allowed to do that, Iran. Even though Pakistan and India have nuclear weapons, right? And these countries were fighting each other. So, but Iran is not allowed to do that because they have the Ayatollah in power. You see, Iran, they had a revolution after the coup d'etat. The Shah was put in power, which is a Western puppet, and the Iranians said, no, we don't want this. Instead of putting in political leaders, which can be corrupted, we're going to put in religious leaders, you know, that follow the Quran and this and that. So this is to give some perspective on Iran, as far as I know. Right? I'm not for the Ayatollah. This is the perspective that is publicly known about Iran. So let's take a listen to Mr. Ted Cruz talking about Iran.
Massive inflation. I think the regime would have fallen. I would use economic sanctions and I would use moral suasion to try to effectuate
But if you
the regime
topple,
change.
okay, so you topple the regime and by whatever means, what happens then? How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
So you want to attack a country, but you don't know how many people live in that country. You don't know anything about the country. You don't know that Iran was part of the Persian Empire. Well, it was a Persian Empire, you know, and it expanded all the way to Syria, Turkey, you know. So these are proud people. The Iranians are proud people, and they remember. They really remember, you know. So you're about to attack a country which you have no knowledge of. You don't care, Mr. Ted Cruz. You don't care about the 92 million people living in Iran, right? You don't care. So let's go back to Tucker Carlson.
Oh,
No, I don't know the population.
you don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it?
Well, you need to know who your enemy is, right? So you need to know how many Shiites and how many Sunnis and other religious factions there are in Iran, right? I mean, you guys put in a Shah, and basically he was overthrown because you did not care. Because all these religious factions back then were suppressed by the Shah, by the external puppet that you put in Iran. Not you, Mr. Cruz, personally, but the United States and England, right? And this is why they're chanting death to America.
Relevant whether it's,
Well, because-
it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million. Why is that
Because if
relevant?
you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and
What percent?
predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
it's not
Okay.
even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
Okay,
actually,
I am not
country,
the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
you're a
who
senator
says,
who's calling for the
you're the one who
overthrow of the
claims,
government,
You're the
and
one
you
who
don't know
claims,
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump.
No,
You're the
I'm
one
not saying that.
who can't figure out
I'm
if it was a
saying
good
you
idea.
don't-
Wait a minute. The guy that tried to kill Donald Trump isn't that secret security? Yeah, isn't that something that the secret security basically responsible for? Do I still have sound? Yes, we do. Isn't that what the United States security is responsible for? What's his name? Dylan, whatever. The guy was shot, right? He was killed in action. So you don't have anyone to testify what the motive was to kill Donald Trump, right? We do know that the roof of the building that the guy was on was too slopey, and this is why there weren't any agents on the roof, even though it was a very good vantage point to shoot at the upcoming president, right? So this is a secret security issue. And we know that the Democratic Party, they're cheating. They are cheating. They're doing anything to cheat their way into politics, right? We know this. We have evidence. The FBI just said that the elections were stolen in 2020, which is what we said on RHTVLive back then. Now, we said it. We said this is not normal. The state suddenly saying, yeah, we're not going to count anymore. Yeah, we're going to count tomorrow. It's not normal. So we knew that something was going on. Right? We didn't have the full political view back then, but we know now. So we have a lawmaker in American Congress who doesn't even know anything about Iran, the country they're willing to attack. Right? They don't care. They don't care how many blood is lost in Tehran or name another place in Iran. They don't care. They only care for their own wallet. Right? How much can I profit from it? How much can Ted Cruz profit from, say, the military-industrial complex? Does he have stocks in Lockheed Martin or something like that? I don't know. Right? But I do know that many people are profiting off of the Ukraine war. Right? We talked about this pump and dump and stuff like that, So every war, there's also profit. And very sad to see that this guy here is basically showing for Israel, we need to attack Iran. We have the Ayatollah in power. That's because of your foreign intervention.
Killed General Soleimani, and you said it was bad. Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation.
Oh, wait a minute. General Soleimani. All right, we're going to go back a bit. Right. So General Soleimani was invited by Syria, right? Because Syria was being overthrown by proxies that wanted to overthrow Assad. The US-led proxies and also Israeli-led proxies, Turkey-led proxies. These were the three basic powers. You also had Saudi Arabia early in the game, and they basically left the game. But still, you had Israel and Turkey and the United States providing the proxies to overthrow Assad. Right? And why, you ask? Well, under the table, they made a deal with Saudi Arabia and Qatar to make a pipeline to extend to Turkey. So Turkey has an export product that they can sell towards the European Union, for example, right? Because the EU sees Russia and basically sanctioned Russia, thus also sanctioning the export of Russian oil and gas towards Europe, right? So Europe said, yeah, we're not going to work with Russia. We need another country, right, that can provide us with gas and oil. Well, Azerbaijan was a very rich country with gas and oil, and they basically provided gas and oil for the Balkan countries, right? Serbia, Macedonia, Greece, Albania, and stuff like that, right? So there came a large proportion of gas and oil. And Azerbaijan said, nope, you guys are sanctioning Russia and the EU. We're not going to give you any more gas or oil. So, and during the sanctions with Russia, all the other European countries were looking elsewhere for, gas and oil. And we were basically in Qatar, not only for the World Cup, but also talking about gas and oil, liquid natural gas, and stuff like that. This was prior to what's happening now, right? So we made a deal with Qatar for liquid natural gas, and that was not very good because the whole region is unstable, right? Now, why would you have a Gulf state give you gas and oil whilst in the North Sea, right, there's a very big gas bubble? We're not allowed to drill according to the EU because that's bad for the environment. So we have to be reliant on other countries giving us the resources for energy, right? So it's one big hellhole, and it's getting a lot worse. Yep. We also have the United States within the Gulf of Aden and within this region here. And who knows, maybe Iran will close off the Straits of Hormuz and, no oil export anymore from Kuwait. Nope, we're not going to do that. So who knows? The United States also has the Nimitz, which is a warship, and it's basically too old, right? They were about to destroy the Nimitz, but it is over there in the Gulf of Aden, and it is deployed. So who knows? Maybe they're going to bomb that ship or something like that, right? Who knows? We also have that one guy talking about Iran, right? Submarine what's his name, Patrick Clausen or something like that, right? Patrick Clausen. There we go. So this dude was talking about, using a false flag pretext to attack Iran, basically. Also giving historical references to U.S.-Spanish War and stuff. So we're going to take a look at this here.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if compromise is not coming, that the traditional way America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall we had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
So there you have that, right? It's best for someone else to start the war. Well, yeah, this was like 12 years ago. And these people plan ahead, right? They know what they're doing. They know. They know all the sites where the weapons are and stuff like that. Donald Trump gave the green light as a warning to Putin to attack deep within Russia. It's not Ukraine doing this. It's the United States State Department doing this, providing information and stuff like that. Well, why is the United States State Department doing this? This is the deep state, the swamp that Donald Trump talks about during his political campaigns and stuff. Yeah, we're going to drain the swamp. Yeah, right. You do not drain the swamp, Mr. Trump, and you're still not draining the swamp, right? But still, there's a glimmer of hope, and yeah, we have to basically go for peace. But how? How can we achieve peace? Even though I just showed you what the underlying way of thinking is in Iran, So let's not talk about Israel, because that's a long list, right? We will not forget the USS Liberty, which was basically a radar ship in the Mediterranean, and Israel said, "Hey, that's American. I don't care. Shoot." And they shot. Yep. So this all happened, right? And that was another false flag. And who knows? Who knows? As I've said before, the Nimitz is in the Gulf of Aden and stuff. So here we have the Nimitz, the 1972 aircraft carrier, and it was supposed to be demolished, right? But no, we need the ship. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe they're going to bomb this ship as a false flag, as a pretext to attack Iran. Right? They've done it before, 9/11. We remember. We know that they're dealing cards on the table, and they don't care. One big game for them, right? One big game for Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz can go into a bunker and spare his own life, whilst many lives in the United States are in danger. They're really in danger. You just made another enemy, Iran, right? So you have two enemies, and one enemy is in the background, which is China. Right? China is very close to taking over Taiwan, right? Whilst all this is happening, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Russia. We also have internal struggles within Sudan and Haiti, stuff like that. The whole world is on the brink of total collapse, the total economic collapse in the Western Hemisphere. Right? And the Russians, they know this. The Chinese know this. This is why there's a BRICS meeting and stuff like that. They know that the Western dominated financial system is about to collapse. So Ted Cruz does not care, right? He does not know anything about Iran. And you can hide in your bunker, but we can't, right?
Have fallen. I would use economic sanctions and I would use moral suasion to try to effectuate
If you
regime.
Oh, economic sanctions, yeah, that really helped, right? That did not help a bit, right? The Ayatollahs are still in power, even though you implemented economic sanctions on Iran. That did not help a bit.
Okay, so you topple the regime and by whatever means. What happens then? How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
You just don't care. Right? You don't give a damn about the Iranians. You give a damn about your wallet, right? That's what you care about. How can I profit from this war? Even though many people are going to die on both sides, right? Not one-sided. Both sides are going to die. And even more people are going to die if you get involved, Donald Trump. So, please, don't do it. Don't give in to the war hawks. Right? Don't do it, Donald Trump. No. Please, leave the Iranians alone. Because we know that Benjamin Netanyahu was pleading for 30 years that Iran was going to get a nuclear weapon, right? We know. We have the video. Here we go. So this is 12th of June 2025, and let's take a look at Benjamin Netanyahu, who's still in power, right, and has been warning us for 30 years that Iran is close to a nuclear bomb.
Not stopped. Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything,
Within half a year. Half a year. This is 1995. Right? Within half a year, they're going to have a bomb. You've been saying that for 30 years. And you've been using the United States, right, to overthrow other governments, such as Saddam Hussein. Even though Saddam Hussein was an ally during the Iraq-Iran war, right, which lasted 8 years. We know our history, and this really pisses me off. But what pisses me off even more, right, is when you're right on the mark, when you're telling the truth, and you get censored, basically. So we were talking about the elections, the 2020 elections, and scandal of the century just broke. The FBI has officially confirmed that the 2020 election was stolen. FBI releases documents providing the CCP worked with the Democratic Party and the CIA to steal the 2020 election using ballots marked for Joe Biden that were flown in from China. So let's take a look at this for a few minutes.
Ballots printed in China. And then when all the counting places are shut down at 1, 2 in the morning, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in Michigan.
Oh, something's wrong here. Oh, darn it.
In come the trucks, and in many of the videos we have them, it's Chinese men and women, a lot of times out-of-state plates getting out. So imagine how many people for the Postal Service driving a big truck full of ballots decided to go look. Not many, but we had 2 go public, and then they got threatened by the FBI. So just since I started talking about this when we went on air today, FBI Director Kash Patel reveals Chinese plot to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020 election. Chris Wray hid this like he did the Iranian breach. That's one angle. No. Trump's FBI unveils shocking details of Chinese plot using fake ballots to defeat him in 2020 election. And that's what it did. You look at the numbers, absolutely stole those states.
China, another sworn enemy of the United States, right? The China remembers. They remember what happened during the Second World War, Manchuria and stuff like that. We know. We feel the sentiment of the Chinese, right? I'm not for the CCP, I'm not for the Communist Party, but we know what the origins are of the CCP, right? We know our history. We know that also in the Asian Pacific, there's a very big anti-U.S. sentiment. And you may ask yourselves, why? Why would there be a anti-U.S. sentiment? Well, Look at what you guys did in Japan. 2 atomic bombs in Japan. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 2 atomic bombs. The United States is the only country that used atomic bombs on another country. But Russia, oh, Russia is bad, right? Because they're attacking a smaller country, according to Kamala Harris, which was almost president. I'd rather have Donald Trump, even though I disagree on the Middle East stance, right? I'd rather have Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris would have broke down and, would have done nothing rather than to escalate and escalate even more, right? So that Russia is also in a predicament. They're in the east of Ukraine, in the Donbass, still fighting, and basically they have lots of regions. The Sumy region in Ukraine is also in Russian hands, and Ukraine is losing the war, and now all the funds and all the weapons go to Israel, right? We're going to forget those Ukrainians. Doesn't matter that the Zelensky government is, kidnapping people off the streets and stuff like that. You have to join the army, right? We're losing the war. You have to join the army. And also, other European member states are, willing to sacrifice their own population for the war in Ukraine. This needs to go on, right? This needs to go on. Even though we know that in the beginning of NATO, there were Nazis, literal Nazis, as higher up within NATO. The so-called reformed Nazis. Now we know that NATO is a Nazi organization. We know it's not defensive; it's offensive, right? You guys were in Afghanistan. You guys were in Libya. Well, what does that have to do with protecting the European continent? Nothing. Nothing. It's just a tool to attack other countries. So, let's see what else is being said here.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's, it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So actually,
I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
I'm also not an expert, right? But I know my history, and I know my country's history, the Netherlands. But we also give a geopolitical look and try to give a consensus on other viewpoints. Right? It's not that Iran hates America per se. It's that Iran hates American influence within their region. That's what they don't like, Mr. Trump and Mr. Ted Cruz, and for all the other American senators listening, Rand Paul, Ron Paul, you name it, right? That's what they don't like. when there was a power vacuum in Iraq, a neighboring country, basically the U.S. wanted to have more influence within the Middle East, right? So they put in a puppet government, as they did with Iran back in the 70s, right? They put in the Shah. So the power vacuum was filled by the neighboring country, Iran, even though there was a war, right? Prior to all this, the Iraq-Iran war, and the Iranians said, hey, you guys are in a power vacuum, we're going to help you guys, we're going to help our neighbors. And that's what they did, basically. It's a very complex situation, but you also had that general, which was in Syria. He was invited in Syria because they were overthrowing Syria, as I've said before, right? So Donald Trump had a wrong vision there. The assassination of Soleimani was, it did not need to go that way, right? He would have still lived. But no, we have a terrorist here. We have a general fighting the proxies that we provided to overthrow a government. Yeah. So, yeah. Donald Trump said he was beating his chest. I destroyed the caliphate. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. It was Iran that stood by Bashar al-Assad from 2012 onward, right? It was Vladimir Putin who was standing by Assad also around that period, right? Whilst you guys were overthrowing Syria, Russia and Iran were protecting Syria. So, but Ted Cruz don't care. He doesn't even know how many people live in Iran.
Anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the
I'm
one
not saying that.
who can't figure out
I'm
if it was a good idea to kill
believe-
General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes.
So, as I've said before, it's something that the Secret Service is basically fault of, not Iran, not some other state outside of the United States, right? So if the news would have said Kim Jong-un is behind the assassination of Donald Trump, then Ted Cruz would say, "Oh, North Korea, bad country. It's not a good country. We can agree on that, But blaming someone, a head of state or a state government, for an assassination attempt, even though it's highly obvious that the internal institutions were involved, right? The FBI, and how can you blame another government for this? And do you have evidence, Mr. Ted Cruz, of Iran trying to assassinate Donald Trump? I don't think so. This is just speculation. Now, we're not going to get a testimony because you guys shot the guy. The same goes with Lee Harvey Oswald. One of the last things he said is, "I'm a patsy." And what did he mean by that? I'm a patsy. We're still debating on it. Was he a triple agent or whatever? We're still debating on it. And the guy who tried to assassinate Donald Trump is dead. So dead men tell no tales. And we can debate all we want about the assassination attempt, but we're never going to find out the truth. When you take away the motive of someone by killing someone, you'll never find out the truth. Right? So as I've said before, Soleimani was fighting the proxies trying to overthrow Syria. Is that a bad thing? We need to find solid ground, right? Cooler minds, right? And give a broad perspective on what's going on here. All right?
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here, because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
this is
Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying...
So you're supporting a country far away which has no interest in your national stuff, right? It's just there for the money, And basically you're saying, they are attacking Iran on our behalf. Yeah, that's what you're saying, Mr. Cruz. And the United States is there in that region as a defensive capability. Yeah, right. Yeah, you believe that? You believe that? Now, why can the U.S. government say to the Houthis, yeah, we're going to have peace? You know, no more conflict between the United States government and the Houthis. Right? We're going to leave each other alone. You can say that to the Houthis, which is an Iranian proxy, but you cannot say that to Iran. Interesting, isn't it?
The United States government is at war with Iran right now. People are listening.
Okay, we are not bombing them.
Oh, okay.
Israel is bombing them. And hey, why do you do the snide okay?
What do you mean? Because this is super high stakes stuff. This is a huge country, borders a lot of other important countries. All the world's energy comes from there.
So
you
don't
want another disaster. You don't want to be
Tucker,
reckless.
The Ayatollah refers to Israel as the little Satan and America as the great Satan.
Why does the Ayatollah refer Israel as the small Satan and America as the big Satan? Why? Why? That is the big question. Why? Well, let's take a look at the Middle East. During the First World War, there was something called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Right, Sykes-Picot. You had the Ottoman Empire, which was basically big parts of the Middle East and also the Balkans, right? Now, the Ottoman Empire chose the Central Powers during the First World War, and basically that fell. The Germans lost. The Austrians said, yeah, we're not going to take part anymore. And they also took their losses. Right? But the Ottoman Empire fell, and basically you had England and France carving up these countries, such as Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, which used to be the Palestinian territory, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, all these countries are because of expansionism of external powers, such as England and France. Right? Kuwait is also a Gulf state financed by England. Same goes for Qatar and the Emirates. You know, we're just giving history here. Right? I'm not making this stuff up. Now look at Lawrence of Arabia. Look that up. Very interesting history in the Middle East. So, yeah, we know what's happening, and we want peace. That is what we want, right? We want peace. We don't want any more wars. We've had enough of war. All the last century was about war, right? Look at the First World War, 1914. And then you had the Second World War. Then you had the Korean War, which was also an extension of the Second World War, right? You had Vietnam. We've had enough wars, you know. And you can carpet bomb whatever country you may wish you want to bomb, but that, you know, that will not help. We remember the carpet bombing of Vietnam against the North Vietnamese, right? The Viet Cong, they were underground. So many bombs went off, right? But these people survived because they were deep underground, right? And after the carpet bombing, people came up and said, hey, look what happened here. We're still alive. Yay, we can fight on. The same is happening in the Middle East, in the Gaza Strip, right? Rafah, which is basically a city split into two. You have the Egyptian side of Rafah and you have the Gazan side of Rafah. But that is the home base of Hamas. And they're also deep underground. So that is how you wage war. You learn from other situations. What happened in history? Hamas has learned from the Viet Cong to go underground, right? Then you're harder to track, you know. So, and the American foreign policy has been bad, very, very bad. Imagine this, right? You had 9/11, which was in 2001. Then you had the invasion of Afghanistan in early 2002, right? And first it was, you know, these people did 9/11, so we're going to get these people and yeah, we're going to smoke them out of their caves. Yeah? Remember that? Smoke them out. So you've been smoking out the Afghans for 20 years, right? And the enemy even changed. First it was Al-Qaeda, and then it was the Taliban. We know what happened. We know about the Mujahideen that fell apart into three opposing groups. You have the Taliban, Northern Alliance, and Al Qaeda, right? And they were fighting each other. And the Taliban won in the late 1990s and took power in Kabul. Now you had the Northern Alliance saying, United States, you gotta help us here against the Taliban. So what happened? 9/11. And suddenly, we're going to invade Afghanistan. Yeah. So the primary goal was basically to install a puppet regime, right? A pro-Western puppet regime. So that basically happened. And the Afghans said, no, we don't want this. A small faction of Afghans basically said, yeah, this puppet government is not willing to listen to the population, because Afghanistan is a decentralized country, right? You go to a country and you think, hey, if I take over the capital, the country will fall. Well, that's what their way of thinking was in the United States back then. They went to Tehran, took over the capital, and yeah, no, we won. No, you didn't. You just have one region within many regions in the country. Yeah? That was not the way of thinking by the United States. So you guys were bogged down in Afghanistan for 20 years. And the main goal was to get rid of the Taliban, right? So 20 years on, who is in power in Afghanistan? Oh yeah, the Taliban. The Taliban is in power in Afghanistan. You know, it's oh my God, really? The same goes for Syria. You guys overthrew Assad, and now you have this jihadi in power, al-Jolani. Yeah, and even though his power is diminished because you have two opposing countries, Israel and Turkey, attacking Syria right now. Even though that's not really in the news. You know, Israel is operating from the Golan Heights and Turkey in the northeast of Syria, where you have the oil fields and the Kurds, which want an autonomous state within Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. So they want a Kurdistan, right? So that is what's happening, basically. There's a lot more happening. We also have the army in Myanmar still in power, and the people are fighting back as well as they can, right? Because our army is being facilitated with bombs and jet fighters and stuff like that, and these people have sticks and stones. So we stand with the people of Myanmar, not wanting to live under a cool government, and we stand with the people in the world who want to be free from their government, free from wars. You know, been long enough, right? We need peace. We need a new way of thinking. We need to understand our our so-called enemies. I don't consider Iran as an enemy. I know they have the Ayatollah in power. They said the politicians can corrupt themselves, so we need religious leaders in power. But Tucker Carlson and what's his name, Ted Cruz, I believe Tucker Carlson knows a bit about Iran, but Ted Cruz doesn't even care. He does not care. He does not care how many blood is being spilled right now in either of those countries. Right? Whether it's Israel or Iran, he doesn't care.
Do you believe him when he says it's the great Satan?
Of course I believe
if
him.
the Ayatollah could murder both of us right now that he would? I do. I believe him.
Okay,
You are paranoid, right? You can also say, Room 9 in North Korea is going to assassinate me. Yeah. It's like, what? Really? Do you really believe that, Mr. Cruz? That the Ayatollah is going to assassinate you? Really? Isn't this like the Red Scare back in the 50s when the USSR was expanding and you're a communist? It's paranoia. It really is paranoia. And it's sad to see that a U.S. lawmaker is within this state of mind, within this paranoia, has a lot of power within the U.S. Right?
I assume no good faith on the part of the Ayatollah.
No, not
and
good
if your
faith.
implication is like, or something.
No, it's not good faith. It's that...
Just saying, you're a lawmaker. You're a powerful person in Washington. This is the most powerful country in the world. If you're calling for toppling in government, it's incumbent on you to know something about the country and to think through the consequences of that. And you haven't, and you don't. And I'm saying that's reckless.
Okay.
He doesn't care.
You engage in reckless rhetoric with no facts. And to be clear,
I'm not...
With no facts. No facts. We just get facts. Right? And I hope that Americans watching this will send this to Ted Cruz and say, hey, we got a Dutch guy who was watching your interview with Tucker Carlson, and giving his response to what you said in Tucker Carlson. I hope that Americans will do that for me. All right? Because we want world peace. That is what we want. We don't want wars. We've seen enough of it. This is not a future for my cousins or neighbors, or, I want to live on and not live in a world of wars, right? Where countries are being taken over by refugees. We have 50,000 Syrians in the Netherlands. And this is because the U.S. State Department said, Assad, he's a dictator. And these 50,000 can go back, but yeah, it's not really a good situation right over there, right? So our government had said, when Assad is gone, you guys can go back. Now Assad is gone, and they're still staying in the Netherlands. 50,000 Syrians, right? Now, is that fair to the Dutch population who's like waiting for the place to live. And you're from Syria, here you have a place to live. You're from the Netherlands, you have family. Go to your family and live there. That's not fair. That's not fair. And all because of the US State Department saying Assad is not playing the game. He doesn't want a pipeline through his country. So we're going to overthrow him. A very, very sad thing to see.
Calling for the
You put out
overthrow
a
of a
newsletter.
government.
You are Donald Trump and calling him complicit.
Never
I can
attacked
read
Donald Trump.
Yes, you have. And by the way,
I campaigned for Donald Trump.
Okay, yes,
And this is after anti-Semitism, this is the last refuge. You're an anti-Semite and you hate Trump.
Okay,
I love Trump.
I will read. You put out a whole newsletter saying Trump has
All right.
abandoned America first. And here's what Trump said in response. Well, considering that I'm the one that developed America first and considering that the term wasn't used until I came along, I think I'm the one who decides that. For those people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon. So for all of those...
Why not? Why is peace not achievable if Iran has a nuclear weapon? I just showed you 30 years of Netanyahu that Iran will have a nuclear weapon in this time frame. For 30 years, he's been singing the same song, right? And Ted Cruz is just promoting it, you know. Oh, this is the new album of Netanyahu. Yeah. No, it's the same old song. Bullshit. Right? Bullshit. I call bullshit on Ted Cruz.
Those wonderful people who don't want to do anything about Iran having a nuclear weapon, that's not peace. That was directed at you.
Man, you got me. Busted.
No, I'm just saying.
Look, my views, look, I like Trump. I campaign for Trump.
Cruz isn't saying anything. He's just pointing the finger. No, you said this. So what? You know, so what? So Tucker Carlson cannot have an opinion on something that he stands for, make America great again. How will this make America great? When you have a power vacuum in Tehran. Well, this is why Iran does not like America. You know, stop being in our region. This is our region. You know, you can come here on vacation, but you cannot come here to decide our policy. The new government in Iran, or not Iran, Iraq, right? The government in Iraq had said we don't want any foreign soldiers on our soil. And yet they still have foreign soldiers on their soil. They say, the new enemy may break out any day now. Now, you, United States, are providing the enemy. You don't want to know how many tax dollars, USA dollars, eventually went to the Taliban. The army you guys were fighting in Afghanistan. You know, it's insane. So, make a long story short, you have no idea what you guys are doing. No idea. You don't care. You obviously want to profit from this. You don't care It's sad. Really is sad to see that these lawmakers don't give a damn. You are a representative, right? You're supposed to represent what the people want from policy, and that's what you're supposed to do. Not giving an opinion on a country you don't even know. You probably don't even know how many people live in the Netherlands because you don't care. We're going to have Donald Trump in the Netherlands pretty soon. In The Hague, we have a NATO conference for a couple of days. So, Ted Cruz doesn't even know where the Netherlands is, right? Probably. I would like to speak to Ted Cruz, right? And I want to tell him the truth. So Trip and Falls says, I believe they go off a script. Who knows? They're not telling the truth. Ted Cruz does not care. He's not telling the truth. Right? So we want peace. That is what we want now more than ever. Because it's going bad. Going very, very bad. So, and who knows? Maybe what's been said, can change some minds and give another perspective. Right? This is why we do this. This is why we stand up and speak out, because we want a future. I want to reach the stars in some decades, right? That's what I want to do. I don't know about you, but I'm sick of all these wars. I'm sick of all this corruption. I'm sick of all this insider trading so people in Congress can enrich themselves, right, whilst the population has nothing. Nothing. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Maxine Waters, a couple of years ago, she said to a couple of homeless people, go home. Right? Go home. Well, they have no home to go to. So, how can you go home when you have no home to go to? Right? Let's see if we can find that. Maxine Waters, go home. Maxine Waters tells a group of homeless people to go home. Go home.
I want everybody to go home. We don't got no home. Okay. That's why we here. Miss Miss Waters, can you home we gonna go to? Yeah. Just a moment. Nothing is going to happen here today.
I want you to go home. We ain't got no home. She does not care. And she's also a representative who fills her own pockets, right, and does not give a damn.
Nothing is going to happen anymore today.
So what about all these names?
What we gonna
telephone numbers
can you read? That's why I'm here, and so I will be downtown with Lasso. I will get the housing authority. That's why they came out.
You're not going to do anything, Maxine Waters. You're just only there for a photo op, right? Oh, I was there. I was there. Yeah, these people were talking to me. Did not care about what they had to say, but I was there. Nice. See, I care.
Today I made them come out here. And I'm gonna go.
And you need to know why they're failing, because Blanca Jimenez repeated, we gave her several meeting requests for you concerning this in Lhasa for years. And now they sit you
There's
here.
nobody in Washington who works for their people in a harder than I do.
I believe
I don't want to hear this.
I don't want to hear this. Yeah, it's because you do not do anything. Right? You're telling homeless people to go home. You have a home to go to, Maxine Waters. You got a pool. You got a car. You got a big house. Whatever. These people have nothing. They have a tent on the streets. And you're a representative. You should be ashamed of yourself. You know? Man. I cannot believe that these people are still in politics in the United States.
I believe you, so can we finish that? Work with me. Work with me so we can house people. That's what
I do every day.
Congressman, we're just, in case you can't see, showing video of you standing on the aisle.
Anyway, there's another war criminal. We got weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Oh. Wait a minute. There were no weapons there, huh, Mr. Bush? No weapons there. Even though millions and millions of people have died. Oh, no weapons in Iraq. Bush. Let's see if we can find that. The weapons of mass destruction. Oh, mass destruction. Wait a minute. You mean the mass destruction you gave Iraq, right? No. Saddam was bad.
Weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here.
Millions of Iraqi people dead. The whole country displaced. Power vacuum of 10 years, which is now filled, finally. Right? They're getting on their feet. And now a neighboring country named Iran is waging war with Israel. Right? So it's sad. Really is sad. What can I say? You have these idiots such as Ted Cruz. You know, it's amazing. Why are these people still in politics? Can anyone tell me why these people are still in politics? Maybe Michelle Bell can tell me why is Ted Cruz, who's basically an idiot who doesn't know much about other countries, why is he still in politics? What about Triple Falls? Maybe she can explain. You know? Why are these people still in politics? Anyone? I thought politics was there for the people, right? So the people need to prevail in politics, right? Not some politicians who's been there for 30, 40 years and hasn't done much. It's all insider trading. We know. We know. Yeah, they laughed. They laughed when the Iraqi children were fatherless, motherless, had no family anymore. They all laughed. They all drank their champagne and probably went to some hookers. And, you know, that's their day. Yeah. They do not care. They're also going to laugh when Iranian people are going to be decapitated and blown into pieces and stuff like that. Yeah, they're going to laugh. They're going to laugh hard.
Trump, I know Trump. I talked to him last night. I'm not against Trump, and you know that.
But you're against his foreign policy.
I think that we should be very careful about entering into more foreign wars that don't help us when our country is dying.
When you say
and our
don't
country
help
is
us,
dying.
Look, yes, focus on our country. I'm all for it. But the naivete.
You don't even know how much money this costs.
Hey,
you don't know anything about the country whose government you want to overthrow, and you're calling me reckless.
I want to stop a lunatic who wants to murder us from getting nuclear weapons that could kill millions of Americans.
Fair.
You say, I can't see how that benefits America.
Now, tell me, when was the last time that Iran used a nuclear weapon? Huh? Tell me, Mr. Cruz, when was the last time that Iran or another country used an atomic weapon on another country? Oh, that was America, right? Land of the free. They're not free. They're slaves to the government. And you're one of the biggest trolls of the government, right? Tell me, Americans, why is this guy still in politics? It's amazing, man. Why are we being led by idiots?
American anyway. That is bizarre. And by the way,
bizarre.
Isolationism, your foreign policy is the foreign policy of Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm a big leftist. This is so silly. And now I'm Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama. Okay.
You see what Ted Cruz is doing? He's pointing a finger. You're this, you're that. You're not giving an inherently potent answer to what Tucker Carlson is saying, right? You're just pointing a finger, right? So I wish Ted Cruz could tell me something about Iran, right? Let's hear this.
Let me just say one last thing.
So how's your foreign policy different from Jimmy Carter's? Seriously.
Please.
I asked that question seriously.
About Jimmy Carter?
So
what century is this? I am
Jimmy Carter. No, wait a minute. It was 1970s, right? Mujahideen. That was in the 70s, in the early 80s and stuff. So that was a policy from Jimmy Carter, right? Let's finance and weaponize these Muslims that will fight Russia in Afghanistan. So I don't think that Tucker Carlson is asking for that, you know. What century is he in? This is the 21st century. During the early 2000s, late 1990s, we all thought, you know, this new millennium, we're going to world peace, better world, this and that. No, it's been a lot worse.
The product of the last 25 years, watching carefully, being involved in the periphery, and I see an unending string of foreign policy disasters that have impoverished and hurt our country.
Unending string.
Unending string. They would include Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and our inability to stop the Houthis, by the way, in Yemen, which exposes us as weak, and I grieve over that. So these are failures.
So, the word drone attack, which created a power vacuum, but Saudi Arabia basically was bombing Yemen, whilst you guys were financing Saudi Arabia, right? Giving them bombs, stuff like that. And England. England was also involved. So, and that's why there's an anti-US sentiment. You guys get your noses involved in stuff you don't know about. The Vietnam War was not about fighting communism. It was about fighting for independence for the Vietnamese. You see, Vietnam was part of Indochina back then, which was a French colony, right? They were fighting for independence, and the Americans came over, Gulf of Tonkin, and they thought within their vision that they were fighting the communists. Whilst the French said, you're not going to get any independence, Vietnam. No, because you're part of French Indochina. Right? So if you have a different view of what's happening, this is how you escalate a war, right? And there's a whole documentary called The Fog of War, where McNamara had said, we didn't know what we were doing in Vietnam. We had no idea. We thought we were fighting the communists. Whilst the Vietnamese fought for their independence from French rule, right? So that is a whole different story, different perspective on history, right? And yeah.
You helped preside over some of them as a member of the Senate.
What failures, foreign policy failures, have I presided over?
Well, we were unable to beat Russia in the war that you supported against Russia. You've been spending the last 3 years telling us that Vladimir Putin is evil and we're going to beat him with other people's children, and 1 million of those kids are now dead. You've never apologized for that. That was a full failure.
By the way, look, the level of number of falsehoods you lay out just in one statement are rather.
You haven't supported the war against Russia?
Are rather stunning. So the war against Russia was caused, which I have explained at great detail, by Joe Biden's weakness.
It supported the war.
It was not caused by Joe Biden's weakness. That was yet another example of U.S. intervention. We had Victoria Nuland from the United States State Department talking to Jeffrey Pyatt, which was an ambassador of Ukraine back then, talking about who's going to take power in Kiev. We can play the video clip. We played it many, many times on RHTVLive. You know? So these people are misinformed. The United States put in the radicals who are fighting Russian-speaking Ukrainians, right? Turning off the gas, water, electricity and stuff, sanctioning basically the east of Ukraine, because the east of Ukraine said, nope, we don't want a coup government. No? We don't want these extremists in power. We will fight back. And Russia eventually got involved in this, right? After they had two agreements, the Minsk agreements, which Europe basically signed, and basically said this was a stalling tactic of Europe to provide Ukraine with more weapons to fight in the Donbass. Right? So that is background of Ukraine. And this shows you that Ted Cruz knows nothing. Nothing.
If you want to talk, we can talk Russia and Ukraine. I'm happy to talk about it.
Says?
No, it's been an absolute disaster.
Okay, but you supported it. Shouldn't you apologize?
No, you should apologize. I'm not going to engage in the demanding of apologies. So I'm
like, that's my point. Is all these failures and no one ever says I'm sorry.
Matter, or do you just...
So facts matter. Yeah. Facts matter. But you, Mr. Cruz, are twisting the facts, making your own version of the story. And as I said before, that sniper that tried to assassinate Donald Trump, he's dead. You don't know the motive. You don't know who's behind this, right? Dylan, what's his name? You don't know the motive behind this. And you state that Iran was there to assassinate Donald Trump. What? On basis of what? Can you show me some papers where it's being said that the Iranian state is behind the assassination of Donald Trump? Can you provide me, some evidence here? Because this is the same as the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which were not there. This is the same as the MH17, which John Kerry back then had said we have video image of Russia using a Buck missile rocket launcher to attack MH17, which is a Dutch plane that flew over Ukraine, over the Donbass, right? So, we still have no images of the Buck missile hitting MH17, even though that is an official story. It's called the noble lie. Right? Something happened, people profit from it, and they use a lie to distort what really happened. Look at 9/11. Insider trading.
Just throw out, if you want to talk, we can talk.
Okay. I do. I want to know why that seems like a true disaster for the United States. You have supported it.
Do you believe Joe Biden's weakness caused the war in Ukraine?
I think Joe Biden's aggression caused it.
His aggression? What aggression?
He demanded that Ukraine join NATO. How does that help the United States?
Is a terrible...
Why are you talking about Joe Biden whilst he basically was involved as a vice president in Ukraine? But he's not the mastermind of it. It's the CIA, intelligence agencies. They are the mastermind behind the fall of Ukraine. Right? We know Georgian snipers were used in the Maidan to kill the demonstrators and the police. We know. There are episodes long time ago on RHTVLive where we show this. We show that Georgian snipers were used in the Maidan. Now we cannot show it anymore because we are blocked from Russian state media. Right? So you got to go way back, somewhere in 2012, No, wait. We reported on Ukraine in 2012, 2014, 15, around that time, right? We showed Russian state media their version of the story. There are two sides of the story. So, it's very sad. Very, very sad that this guy's a lawmaker. It's like, what, really? Really? Anyway, we've been live for almost 2 hours. We could go on for many, many more hours, but I think we said enough, right? So I ask all of you Americans, Canadians listening, please send this to Ted Cruz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, name another politician. Send this to them, right? And tell them we know. We know the truth. We know what's going on. And we're watching you, Ted Cruz, and all these other war hawks, right? Profiting from mass destruction. Sad, man, really sad. We're run by monsters that, do a sacrifice before a very big owl in the Bohemian Grove. Oh, we know about the Bilderberg Group. We know about the depopulation stance, right? We know that they were in Sweden talking about depopulation. That was something on their agenda. We know. We are aware of the many ways of warfare that are being used on the population, whether it's in the Netherlands, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in other countries. We know. We know. And I hope that the light is being spread all over the world, because we need peace. That is what we need. And we need less of all these weirdos over here, like Ted Cruz, less of those people. And we're going to close off with a couple of minutes of Iran, right? Just to give another perspective. Yeah. Because that's very important, as I've said before. So let's see if we can find the clip that we're about to show. Hopefully we can find the clip. Let's see. It's about Iran, basically, and their history and stuff. Very interesting. Oh yeah, this guy, Tim Walz, he's a bad politician. I believe there was someone within his party that, assassinated people in Minnesota, right? So, yeah, Tim Walz is bad news. Let's see if we can find the clip I wanted to show you guys. about Iran, right? Was Freddy versus Jason worth the wait? Yeah, it was. It was pretty cool. The universal key, yeah, that's also cool. Let's see what we got here. Nope. Yeah, the Superman movie. Yeah, that's going to be cool, right? Even though I don't James Gunn, rather have Zack Snyder, but I found this clip of Iran somewhere, but it seems to be gone. House of Bad Influence. Ministry, yep. Let's see. Store, which is also cool. They're doing parkour within England and stuff. Let's see. Nope, cannot find it. Let's see if we can find it on Facebook. Because I did post it. I remember that, right? So, let's see if we can find it on Facebook. There we go. Now we're on Facebook. Let's see. I kind of gave wrong information. I said Ahmadinejad was dead, but this was pretty soon after the assassination attempt. So let's see if we can find. This is also very interesting. He said.
Any science to back up your opinion?
The best data are autopsies. So in the largest autopsy series published to date, I know because I'm the senior author, of all the deaths we examined, and we re-reviewed them. We had an adjudication committee. We had ways of arbitration deciding on did the vaccine cause death. The answer is, of these cases that came in for autopsy after vaccination, 73.9% of individuals, it was determined that the vaccine was the cause of death. First author is Holscher and colleagues. He's sitting right behind me.
What did I say all that time? Right? Yep. Now we're right on the mark again. Let's see if we can find the importance on Iran, right? Let's see. This is also very interesting. Entire history of Jerusalem. We'll touch upon that. But this is interesting. I'm going to close off with that. And we need to go back. Let's turn back the hands of time, right? We're going to close off with this here in the hope.
Shattered armies and
in the hope that people will realize what kind of situation we're in, right? The resilience of a nation.
They've toppled kings, shattered armies, and written the rules of war. But there's one nation they just can't break. Not with bombs, not with lies, not with all the power in their hands. Iran has stood where others have fallen. Why? Because this isn't just about politics, it's about purpose. What if I told you there's a reason why Iran is feared more than it's understood, that behind every sanction, every threat, every drone strike, there lies a deeper war, not for land, but for the soul of resistance. And here's the part no one wants to admit. Iran's strength isn't just in its weapons. It's in its belief, its history, its unshakable unity. This is the painful truth the Muslim world must confront. Because if we understood it, we'd stop fearing the storm and start becoming it. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't just know why the West can't defeat Iran, you'll feel the fire of a faith that refuses to kneel. Iran, historically known as Persia, has stood as one of the most enduring civilizations on earth, maintaining its identity and sovereignty across thousands of years. Unlike many other regions that have been colonized, partitioned, or culturally erased, Iran has consistently preserved its political and cultural backbone even in the face of monumental invasions and shifting global powers. From the ancient Achaemenid Empire to modern-day Iran, this nation has demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt, resist, and rise again. When Alexander the Great brought his forces to Persia, he was met not just with armies, but with a civilization so rich in heritage that even in conquest, he absorbed more from them than they did from him. Later, the Romans and Byzantines could not conquer it. Even the Mongols, who left destruction in their path across much of the Islamic world, could not fully dismantle the Iranian spirit. Persia absorbed them, Islamized them, and restructured itself yet again. In the colonial era, when Western powers carved up the Muslim world, Iran remained one of the few countries that was never fully colonized. The British and the Russians tried, and while they gained influence, they could never dominate Iran the way they did India, Egypt, or other Muslim lands. This wasn't because Iran was militarily invincible. It was because it had a deep-rooted system of identity that could not be extinguished. Its people carried a memory of empire, of faith, of culture that lived deeper than borders or governments. Its poets were warriors of spirit. Its mosques weren't just places of worship, they were strongholds of resistance. Its language, Farsi, did not bend to colonizers. Its clerics became voices that awakened the masses, and its history was taught not just in textbooks, but in homes, in hearts, in the rhythm of daily life. Iran's ability to navigate the tides of history also lies in its strategic geography. Nestled between East and West, Iran has always been a bridge and a barrier. It controls vital land routes, shares borders with key nations, and sits above some of the world's richest energy reserves. But it's not just the land that makes Iran resilient, it's the people's mindset. Even in modern times, during the US-backed coup in 1953, or the brutal war with Iraq in the 2000s, 980 funded and armed by Western and Gulf powers, Iran refused to fall. Its people dug graves with one hand and raised flags with the other. They buried their sons and sent their younger ones to the front lines, not because they were suicidal, but because they believed their soil was not for sale. Iran's long memory and strong identity have been its shield. Empires have come and gone, ideologies have risen and collapsed, yet Iran remains. It may be isolated, sanctioned, demonized, but it is never conquered. And that is not by accident. It is by design, by faith, by history. Iran's independent political doctrine is one of the primary reasons the West has been unable to dominate it. Unlike many other nations that have been absorbed into the Western-controlled international order, Iran operates with a completely different ideological compass. After the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran broke ties with Western influence, particularly with the United States, and charted a path of sovereignty rooted in Islamic principles and resistance. It was not just a change in leadership, it was a rejection of the Western worldview altogether. The revolution wasn't just political, it was spiritual, cultural, and economic. Iran chose to prioritize self-reliance over dependency, resistance over submission, and dignity over profit. It pulled itself out of the grip of IMF and the World Bank that have long been used as tools of economic control by the West. Instead of borrowing money with strings attached, Iran decided to develop its own economy, even if it meant going through years of hardship. This decision made Iran a target, but it also made it untouchable in ways the West could never anticipate. By refusing to integrate into the Western economic and political systems, Iran removed the very levers of manipulation that are used against so many other countries. You cannot threaten a nation with isolation when it has already chosen to stand alone. You cannot blackmail a people with sanctions when they have built a culture around sacrifice. Iran's refusal to recognize Israel in its open defiance of American hegemony is not just political posturing. It is a conscious and strategic decision rooted in its ideological framework. It sees itself as a vanguard for oppressed nations, a torchbearer for Islamic dignity, and a defender of global justice in a world dominated by double standards and hypocrisy. This doctrine of independence is also why Iran refuses to host foreign military bases. Unlike many Muslim countries that allow U.S. troops on their soil, Iran does not. It does not allow foreign advisors to dictate its defense strategies, nor does it allow foreign companies to control its natural resources. Its oil is nationalized, its media is state-owned, its elections, while not perfect, are not overseen by foreign observers. This level of political sovereignty has made it both respected and feared. The West cannot co-opt Iran from within because its leadership, despite internal disagreements and challenges, is rooted in a system that sees Western control. Iran's foreign policy is also a reflection of this doctrine. It does not bow to shifting alliances or popular pressure. It supports movements that align with its vision, whether in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, or Yemen, not because it wants empire, but because it wants resistance.
This is why Iran is a dangerous enemy. Right? This is why they want to get rid of the Ayatollah in Iran. The mullah. It's another name. Right? This is why. This is why. And as I've shown you guys, the Iranians also have a perspective. Right? They said no politicians. Politicians corrupt themselves, so we need religious leaders. Even though most of Iran does not really want religious leaders, but they know that religious leaders will not be corrupted. They have faith in what they're doing. Right? Anyway, I hope that this will be shared all over. I'll share this with Ted Cruz, and also Tucker Carlson can also watch. Right? So I thank you all for watching, and we'll see each other next time. I hope you learned something, and I hope this will be shared